This past week, we talked about the season of Kingdomtide, that period between All Saints Sunday and Advent 1. Today, we continue with the theme as we explore the last things of 1 Thessalonians and the gospel parable for today. At first, I admit, I was struck by the contrast between the two. In one, God has destined us not for wrath, but for obtaining salvation. And oddly, Jesus illustrates the truth through a parable of a dishonest landowner. How do we reconcile these two concepts? First, the Thessalonians lesson contains Paul's teaching about the last things. The theme is to be ready at all times. Jesus' return will come at a time that we do not expect it. And we must ask ourselves, are we ready or not? Some years ago, I went to hear Dr. Tony Campolo speak. He's a Baptist pastor, most notable for being chaplain to President Clinton. He always has a very ready wit. He asked the audience a question, and for those unfamiliar with the holiness code of the Deep South, it used to be said that Christians should not do 5 things. Thou shalt not drink, thou shalt not smoke, thou shalt not dance, thou shalt not play cards, thou shalt not go to movies. He then leads out his talk. When it comes the last trumpet, will the Lord find you in the movie theater? And even so, though we Episcopalians chuckle at the holiness code of bygone years among our Protestant brothers and sisters, it does make a point. Are we ready? God's plan for those who choose him is not punishment. It is amazing how in the conversations that I have had with unchurched folks, they seem to think that God is either distant or vengeful. God is loving. So loving that he would not spare his only son. As he speaks with the Thessalonians, he assures them that if they are awake, that's a euphemism for living, or asleep, a euphemism for death, they are loved and destined for salvation that's already paid for and figured out. This is supposed to be of comfort, and this is a comfort that the world needs if we are to reach those others that God is going to call through us. And so, comfort one another with these words. Now, in contrast to that, we find the stark words of the parable of the tenants. Investments are made with talents. We might think the word may be a little bit unfortunate in this case. We automatically think we're talking about natural abilities, but in this fact, the talent is a wage. The dishonest investor illustrates a truth about life. If you have abilities that you are given and they are not being utilized for the kingdom of God, then we will lose those abilities. 2 people in the story use their talents effectively, one yielding 5 more, a more aggressive or risky investor, you might say, and the other yielding 2 more. The increase is in direct proportion to what they had. The dishonest investor knew that the one who was given 5 would act more shrewdly. The one who was given 2 would act more conservatively. And nonetheless, they did act, though. And the dishonest investor deems them, well done, good and faithful servant. But the weight of the story is on the response of the cowardly one. There will come a time when we must give an account for the things that God invests in us. Do we squander them out of fear, or do we invest them with the bankers to give a return? So let me give you an example. Every musician knows that feeling in the pit of the stomach when the rehearsals are over and the performance must begin. There is fear. You either play boldly, mistakes and all, or go home. But musicians that never conquer that joy, never know the joys of hitting those perfect notes and the crowd smiling at their investment of time and courage. The cowardly one goes to the rehearsal but refuses to go out and play for the performance. But God has not given us a spirit of fear, but rather a spirit to know him and love him. In return, for all we have been given, for all of our natural abilities as well as those he gives us through spiritual giftedness, and those physical talents that we offer him each and every week for the mission of the church, we are all called to invest without fear. The gifts given to many of us are manifold. And while some invest in notes and pitches, others invest with spade and pruning shears, or ledger sheets, or paper and hot glue gun. It matters not what the principle is made of, it matters that we are willing to invest in the kingdom. Let's also look at the positive part of this lesson. To everyone who asks, more will be given. In other words, if you lose it, God will entrust you with more. Conversely, if you do not use it, you will lose it. Jesus speaks to us about accountability. To whom much is given, much will be expected. What is God calling you to invest in his kingdom? Maybe you have a gift that none of us is privy about. Will you dig it out of the ground and share it despite your fear? Will you give it a chance to grow? Midway through this Kingdomtide, how badly do you want to repay the Lord for his gift and comfort of salvation? And how badly do you wish to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful in a few things. I will put you as master over many things. Enter into the joy of your master." I hope to one day hear that. In fact, I know that I will hear that. You can know too. And those things which God has invested in you, share that you may encourage one another to do the same.